Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
Tomorrow is opening day.
This morning, didn't have a great hunt. Deer didn't move like usual.
We just got set up in the middle of this bedding thicket. Saving this spot from the rut. It's a nice, I think it's a nice buck.
Boom! Hits a 170.
That was money. I think he's down right over there through 10 yards.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy.
Baller rut.
It's the rut, bro. Got anything chasing?
No.
Not me neither. This is probably going to release Wednesday. You're going to shoot a buck tomorrow morning, which will be Saturday morning.
Yep.
I'm going to shoot a buck Saturday night off Boonertown.
Nice.
Then I'm going to shoot Mr. Freeze on the 9th. You're going to shoot Sidekick on the 10th. Then I'm going to go to Missouri for rifle season, shoot a 130, and we're just going to wrap it up for this season.
Man, dude, that is the best plan I've heard yet.
It's my game plan. It's probably not going to happen. What's probably going to happen is we're going to shoot a couple 18-month-olds. We're going to move on with our lives and say that they're 3.5s. That's also my backup plan for late season. Shout out Justin on that. Here we go. We got Steve Stoltz on this one. We're talking about Whitetail Tech app. I'm pumped about that app, dude. I think that it's going to be awesome to look on this when I have questions that I want some clarification on, when I should call, what time I should call, different kinds of calls, different setups, stand placement, wind direction, moon phase. I mean, come on, moon phase, bro. I mean, another guy to really dig into the moon phase.
I know. He had so much intel. It's hard to get everything out of him because I know I'd love to dive into that.
So this is going to be a 2. It's another one of those good ones where we break it up in 2. So you're going to have to come for the second episode to finish up with Steve. This is also a way to get you guys to come for the second episode. But for me, an hour of talking and knowledge is hard. That's enough for me to retain and take notes on.
And you want the guy to introduce himself, get his credibility.
I mean, he's a
built
4-time world champion turkey caller. I mean, he has a long introduction just as himself because it's Steve Stoltz. He's a legend, you know. So this is the most famous person we've had on the podcast as of this time. So
awesome.
Shout out to Got Game Tech for reaching out for him coming on.
Yep.
Shout out for Steve for coming on and spending time with us. Talking about Mr. Freeze a little bit like we do every episode. That's the only thing.
Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast. Mr. Freeze is brought up.
Yeah. So let's just get right into our partners and we'll get into the episode so we don't get this intro too long. So we're going to start out with the title sponsor, the VIP Veteran Broadhead. Do you have the VIP Veteran Broadhead shout out pulled up or no? You're not.
Yeah,
prepared?
I got it brought up right here.
You got it? Oh, he is prepared.
I'm on top of it.
Go ahead and start with that.
This week on the VIP Veteran Broadhead shout out, we have Philip Ferraro. He served 22 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, worked in aviation and the ground side, retired as a sergeant major from the VWM 263, which was the first squadron to serve in Iraq flying the new V-22 aircraft. Philip, that sounds pretty badass, man. We can't thank you enough for joining the Marine Corps and serving as long as you did. I'm sure you had to sign up a couple different times, so we can't thank you enough for your service.
Yeah, thank you from me, the Whitetail Legacy podcast crew, and both of our families. For this week, to talk about the veteran, I want to talk about all the other stuff that he has. He has the Veteran Broadhead, which we love, but he has the hog logs for the guys down south.
Yep.
He has the Adam Broadhead.
Yep.
He has the Guillotine turkey, which we're getting into this spring. That's the only way I'm killing a turkey is if I cut its head off with a guillotine. calling it out. Not taking a shotgun. No shotgun this year. So it's not, he has the veteran broadhead down to a science, but he has so much more with the best customer service around to back it up. The guy will literally call you on his personal cell phone and be like, all right, how can I help you? You're not getting some tele-automated thing saying, well, if you bought this in the last 6 months, press 1. If not, you're screwed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
He's calling you direct. He's really passionate about that.
Yeah, and big shout out to Matt. We were going to buy the veteran broadheads for the last episode's giveaway, and he stepped up and said, you know what? I'm going to send the special gift to these veterans because they deserved it, and he put the bill for us.
Yep.
So, big
So
shout out to
you
Matt
two
and Cindy.
gentlemen should thank Matt.
Yeah.
And you already know that we thank you for serving. So
Yep. All right, let's get into Ingram's outdoor obsession. He just had a 6-pointer come in with the unicorn point. Sick. Giant 6 with a single, with another third, like a third base.
third beam.
Yeah,
Whatever.
third base. Not even a beam, a
Yeah.
third base coming out. And then a double drop time handlebar back
I
too,
can't
so.
wait to see that.
I know, I'm
I can't
super
wait to
stoked.
see either of them.
I'm ready to go up there and just dig around in the rack pile and look at all the stuff that I wish I shot.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
a lot of bucks coming in. He said the third week of October was really good, and then after that, it's kind of went down, kind of what we've been seeing. And he said a few ones have been coming up. He said he's been getting a lot of bucks in that want to get a European mount, so maybe not the biggest deer that people shot, but decent bucks. So he's getting a lot of European mounts in right now, and I feel like that's those 3.5-year-olds starting to chase a little bit. So
Yeah.
he's getting those in, and
Especially the third week of October. I mean, they're
yeah, he said he got some giants in the third week of October, but that's when we had that cold front hit.
right.
So I feel like that's got a big part to it.
But-
I love being able to call him and be like, hey, man, what bucks are coming in?
Right.
Because then I get an idea. He's like, oh, some slammers came in. So then I'm like, okay, there's some slammers moving.
But props to him for being able to accept a double drop time buck.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, people
That's
have that much
intimidating.
confidence
Yeah.
in him to bring it back to life.
And big shout out to him. He's been doing a lot of filming this year with
Has he?
James Wheeler. He said he's never hunted so high in a tree. He said he was 32 foot was what his rangefinder said.
Are we talking about the same guy?
Yes.
Ingram's been filming Wheeler?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's pretty cool. He said he got to get out a lot in October, and then he said the bucks started coming in, so he just said, I need to get my ass in the shop, so he just went to the shop.
Oh, man, dude, that
So,
sucks.
But, all right.
Well, that's awesome, though.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's running the camera.
Yeah, he's running the camera.
Nice. So Zach's hunting hard, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out Zach.
Yeah. Got a slammer, too.
I know.
The chase.
God.
Oof. The good thing about running this podcast is I get just trail cam pics all the time. I'm like, man, these guys are everybody's got big deer this year.
Shout out to the heater right now. It is ripping.
Yeah, the heater makes it feel great in here. That's the biggest improvement that we made besides the mic stands. It's like 98 in this place. So last year I was in full like snowmobile suit. This year I'm in a t-shirt out here. All right, anyways, scent lock. What do we want to cover on scent lock here? What do we got going on? Do you know what I like to cover? I like to cover have I covered the gloves? Like this, the
No.
early season gloves.
No.
So on the early season gloves, so you get like an early season glove most places, and they don't think, we always say that scent lock thinks about the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got a textured fingers on the bottom, right?
Right.
And then you got the text or phone button.
The phone finger pad.
Yeah, it's like a sewed little pad, so you can actually wear your glove and use your phone.
Uh-huh.
I know a lot of people out there say they don't look at their phone, but I text homie a lot when we're hunting two different spots, and I'm like, what's the movement like over there? Is there maybe a deer possibly coming my direction that I could rattle in or grunt or something, or be prepared to look that way? So I like that added feature of the glove touch button, so you don't have to pull your glove off, get your hand cold, and then do the texting.
And one thing about them gloves, I mean, they're not built for the colder temps, but they do keep your hand warm.
Yeah.
and they're tight fitting.
Yeah, they are tight fitting.
So
and
tight fitting with the warmth
I like
built in.
how the wrist is tight. The wrist is tight too. It's not like some gloves how they got that like collar that pops out around your wrist.
Mm-hmm.
It's tight, so it goes underneath your clothing, so you don't have to worry about your release maybe getting caught up or your string or something.
Or you have to put your gloves on first before you put your jacket on or your sweater or whatever
to get underneath.
It just goes right in.
Yep. All right, that's it. We covered them all.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's get right in here and listen to Steve Stoltz. This has been an awesome episode for us, and
a little awkward beginning.
Oh yeah, I
because
forgot to
it's
mention
one
that.
of them.
It's one of those where he's just talking about being a world turkey call champion, and I just look at homie. I'm like, dude, just hit the record
Cody
button.
just asked a question, and Steve started on a roll. So he's like, all right, we got to start it sometime.
Yeah.
So
but we start turkey talk just because it's Steve Stoltz and he's like master turkey caller. We had to get that out, but we got him lined up to come back on for a preseason turkey calling tips. I'm stoked about that. That's gonna get me pumped.
My pin's gonna be on fire.
That's gonna get me pumped to turkey call. So he goes way back into stories when he was young calling, which is super cool. And then we get into some whitetail stuff. We get into the app, and then you have to come back next week to get into the rut calling tactics.
Can you call turkeys and film at the same time?
With a mouth call all day.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to see where you're at, trying to see where I need to be.
Yeah. So, all right. Enjoy, guys.
Actually won my first Missouri State turkey calling championship in 1981 of all things. So I wasn't a guy that just rolled in and won overnight. And I kept pecking away and climbing up there, and back in those days, the top competition was like, of course, Dick Kirby, the late Dick Kirby, and, Walter Parrott, Paul Butsky, the Rom brothers, guys like that. Hopefully I'm Ray I, just a multitude of legends in the industry. And those were the guys I had to try and beat. And then they of course, eventually I got to where I was competing right with them, and placing and winning right with those guys. Not as often as I would have liked, but that's turkey calling. At any rate, my good friend Mark Drury, who we'll go into the history of Drury Outdoors as well, but Mark was a good close friend at that time. In fact, in 1989, I was in his wedding when he got married to his beautiful wife Tracy, and Mark had went to the World Championship, was a fierce competitor in 1992 and won in Mobile, Alabama. Talked me into going in 1993. I had never went to the World. I'd been to the Grand Nationals and had some moderate success. Never had won it, but I'd never had a chance to go to the World Championship. And Mossio started putting a lot of money into that calling championship and moved it to Birmingham, Alabama, and made it the World Turkey Expo. So it was a big show. And I want to say there was close to 50 callers in that first World Championship that I went to in 1993 in Birmingham, Alabama. Very, very well covered by the media. A lot of money. I won probably close to $5,000 in prizes and gifts in money. At that time, it was one of the biggest purses given in a World Championship. I think it was a $25,000 purse for that 93 World. And I couldn't believe it. I called after first, I believe it was either 47 or 50 callers, and Walter Parrott and I tied for first place, and I had to beat him in a call-off to win my first World Championship. And then from there, it kind of started snowballing. Actually, in the 90s, I did very well. I won the Grand National Championship, Champion of Champions, at the NWTF convention in Indianapolis, Indiana. And, of course, made the top 12 in the Grand Nationals many, many years. And then I won a World Two-Man Championship with Mark Drury, and then another World Two-Man Championship with Chris Parrish. So I've actually got 3 world titles.
Man, that's impressive.
Well,
Homie loves turkey hunting.
I do.
Like shooting a turkey is like a 160 to him. So you're speaking his language. I like turkey hunting, but when you're calling, are you? So I'm gonna sound really dumb right now, but I know nothing about the World Championship. So are you using different kind of calls, or what are you doing there?
yeah. So, and for those that are listening, if you ever want to watch a great turkey calling championship, just go to YouTube and type in Grand National Turkey Calling Championships, and usually like the latest, like the 2018 preliminary round and final round should be posted up there on YouTube. 2017. You can also Google World Turkey Calling Championships, and those calling contests will be up there. And you can even find individuals calling on there. But in a sense, you can use whatever call you want to use, whether it be a mouth call, friction call, or a combination of whatever it takes to win. Judges can't see you call. And then when you're done, then they score you. And some contests, like the Grand National Finals, they'll score you and then turn around, kind of like The Voice, where they have their back to you and score you, and then turn around and critique you after you call.
Oh, that's cool. So they don't know who's calling and
No.
number. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Not at all. No, but I will tell you again, for your listeners, if you want to learn a lot about turkey calling quick and what a lot of the top turkey callers today sound like, your Matt Van Sice's, your Scott Ellis's, your Jesse Martin, Billy Argus. I mean, the list goes on. If you want to hear your current big name top sounding callers, just go on YouTube or Google them, and you'll find them quick.
That's neat, man. I've never done that. I'm gonna do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check them out.
You can even check out what old Steve Stoltz sounds like. Just last name Stoltz.
Heck yeah, I'll do that.
At what point or what time of the year is this championship held?
Well, the World Turkey Calling Championship was the oldest turkey calling contest, I think, in the country. The year that I won in 1993, so that was the 50th annual. That's why they made it a pretty big deal. So, well, now that's been, so now I imagine there's been about, if I do the math correctly, probably close to 80 world championships now. And then now that doesn't mean there's 80 world champions. There's quite a few guys that have got multiple championships. Most recently, Matt Van Sice from Pennsylvania. I think he's won 8 of them, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
Probably the most. Matt Van Sice is definitely the most accomplished current turkey caller there is in the industry. And then I think Ben Rogers Lee, the world famous Ben Rogers Lee, the late Ben Rogers Lee, I think he won 5 or 6 world championships, and then a multitude of people have won multiples. So, but it started. I guess back in the 40s, 1940s, and the first World Turkey Calling Championship ever was held in Mobile, Alabama, and a guy by the name of Fred Simpson won that turkey calling championship, the first ever. Of course, that was before we were all born, but anyway.
I would say when you were doing that in 93, I was 3 years old.
You were winning champions, and we were pooping our diapers,
right?
So
I was 30. I want to say I was upper 20s, early 30s when I won that.
Man, what an accomplishment, man! That's super cool to go down there, like you said, to not really expect anything, and then to win. That had to be just a rush.
I can tell you, I'm not gonna lie to you. I cried, not on the stage like a beauty pageant or anything like that. But, I was, of course, tremendously tickled and happy, and everybody was very happy for me. But where it hit me is when the media interviewed me and started asking me how long and how hard have I worked to get to that point. And it just hit me that I actually won a world championship.
Yeah.
And it'll I'll tell you, it'll choke up anybody. And I think that's that way with any pro athlete, whether they're winning the World Series or the Super Bowl, or of course the Super Bowl of turkey calling, which is what I won. It just when it hits you, it's very emotional, and it's gonna, you all of a sudden realize I really, at this one time, this one place and time and moment, was the best in the entire world. So pretty special and amazing. Yes.
When you are the first time you call of the day, is it a little rusty, or are you just firing right off the get-go? Because I know, like, my first series in the woods when I'm hunting, it's a little rough, and then I get the hang of it after the first set.
No, not. I've been doing it so long. Probably not. It's almost like, but I will tell all the listeners that to keep. So I mostly use mouth calls, but now I use a lot of friction calls as well when I'm hunting. I mean, you got to use a variety. And I know we're getting ready to talk about deer hunting and a deer app, but for turkey calling, you definitely got to have a variety of devices. But so I don't mess up on my first call, my first mouth call, I should say. I keep a flat toothpick between the top reed and the second reed. That's it. And I'll put that in there when I put the call away. I'll actually rinse it off in cool water, dry it with a paper towel, and then let it, and put that toothpick after I dry it in between the reeds, just the top reed and the second reed. One reed, flat toothpick. Break that flat toothpick in half, put that flat end in between the reeds, and let that call dry with that toothpick in there. And then when you get out in the woods, and it could be pitch dark, the turkey's gobbling on the roost, and you want to wet that call and make sure you don't make any mistakes, just wet that call and slide that toothpick side to side. You can even do it in a pitch dark. I mean, you don't even have to see, or be able to see, I should say. Slide that toothpick side to side, get that top reed loose. So unseize that top reed, and you should not make any mistakes with your turkey calling from the very get-go.
Yeah,
That's a great tip.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. You said we're going to talk about deer hunting, deer tips, or deer calling, but when you got Steve Stoltz on the line, you can't not talk about turkey too. It's like, so we had to.
I feel a little. I would be remiss to say that I don't have a show out there like Lee and Tiffany, although I know them, Mark and Terry Drury, and of course I helped Mark and Terry start Drury Outdoors back in 1989, and Don and Candy Kiske and Pat and Nicole Reeve and all your top television show personalities, Stan Potts. I mean, the list goes on. But I've hunted with all of them, and if I've not hunted with them, I know them very well. And Harold and David Knight, Ray I, of course, like I said, the Drurys, Matt Moret, and Dick and Chris Kirby, and I mean the list goes on and on and on of people that I know, or I've actually shared the woods, shared a tree with. And I kind of, now that I look back at my I'm starting to head towards retirement here, and not so much from the outdoor industry, but just from, of course, work as a firefighter. But I look back at my career in the outdoor industry, and it's kind of like I've kind of had a Forrest Gump career. I went to my first turkey calling contest in 1979 and didn't know how to do the key run. And my dad, unbeknownst to me, signed me up for the contest. I thought we were just going to watch. And before we went, he told me, he said, "Steve, bring your turkey calls with you." And I was in my teens, probably just high school age. He said, "Bring your turkey calls with you." And I said, "How come, Dad?" And he said, "Well, I got a couple of guys who want to hear you call. I think you call really well." And I go, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll bring them." So I brought my little package of mouth calls, got there, and all these callers, top callers in the state were there. And I was mesmerized by the sounds, and they were all practicing for this calling contest. And my dad walked up to me and said, "Do you have your calls with you?" I go, "Yep." He goes, "Good. I signed you up for the contest."
Oh, man, throw you right in the fire, huh?
Oh yeah, threw me right in the fire. And so that's how it all started, actually. I had been hunting and killing turkeys since 1971. So at a very young age, my dad called my first turkey in for me. And then after that, I was on my own and was a pretty accomplished caller by the time I actually went to my first calling contest. But I had no idea I was going to compete. Well, the long story of it is I didn't know how to do the Kiki run. We never had a fall season in Missouri before that. And so I had never learned to do the Kiki run, a major intricate part of the turkey's language, I should say vocabulary. And I said, Dad, I can't call in this contest. One of the calls they're asking for is a Kiki run. He said, well, let's go over there and ask one of those guys that's practicing. They'll teach you how to do it. So that's a true story. I walked up, tapped a guy on the shoulder, and I said, sir, could you help me? And he turned around, looked like the blacksmith from Silver Dollar City. And he goes, sure. He goes, what's the problem? I said, I don't know how to do the Kiki run. My dad signed me up for the contest. Could you teach me how to do it? And the contest now starts in about 10 minutes. And he just laughed. He goes, sure, come out in the hallway, son. And then he took me out in the hallway. He said, now put your turkey call in your mouth. I put my turkey call in my mouth. He said, now give me a real high note. And I went, wee. And he said, now with that note, say P, P, P 3 times. And I went, beep, 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 beep. He said, now yelp after that. And I said, beep, 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 yep, yep. He goes, oh, you're liable to beat me, son. And the funny part about it, I don't have a call with me right now, believe it or not, but the funny part about it was the guy that taught me that was none other than the world famous, now legendary Ray I. And so how lucky was that I had Ray I teach me how to do the Kiki run in my first calling contest, and out of 32 callers took 5th place in that contest, my first contest ever.
Wow.
So that was just kind of catapulted me into competing, into kind of the limelight as far as the hunting world. I mean, when you start doing well in calling championships and winning state championships, and of course, eventually world titles, you're asked to do seminars and you're asked to be on pro staffs, and it just starts snowballing. And then in 1989, I was asked 1989. That was the year. My good friend Mark Drury, who I've been competing and calling and working with on turkey calls, and he's so smart and intelligent. He jumped up there very quickly in the competitive world. I mean, he went from just in a few short years from not being able to even make the finals in a contest to actually placing in the top 5 of the Grand Nationals. And that's how talented Mark Drury was, and smart. And he called me one day. I was on duty at the fire station, and he said, Steve, Terry and I, Terry Drury, his brother, we're going to start making hunting videos. Would you be interested in helping us? And I'm like, I thought about it, and I go, well, that'd be cool. At the time, I'd already won about every calling contest there was, except for the Grand National and World. So I was really doing well in that, and with some great companies at the time in the outdoor industry. And it was like, that would be a new challenge to go out and start getting film of our hunts. And so I went with them on the very first Drury Outdoor flagship film trip. And I was so impressed with that trip. We actually filmed a turkey kill on that trip, and I killed a turkey off camera because we only had one camera with us. So we only ran one crew per morning. So I was odd man out for a little while, and I went ahead and hunted, of course, and killed a turkey. So we came back from that trip so excited about that film kill. I went ahead and bought a brand new camera for my kind of buy-in to Drury Outdoors. And that's how I started with them. We started it in 1989. We felt like we could do videos that would compete with like your Will Primos and some of your big companies out there that were producing videos.
Man, that's incredible. We're talking to a legend right now.
Right.
It's awesome, man. We can't thank you enough for coming on, because you don't get the chances to talk to people like this, at least, especially for an hour. So
Well, I appreciate it. You know, what's cool about it. I don't want to fast forward, jump over everything on my history, but I will tell you, uh, being with Mark and Terry Drury, and of course Don Kiske, and Jay Gregory, and that whole group, was a phenomenal experience for me. You know, uh, so for many years we produced videos that we felt were on the cutting edge. And I think Drury Outdoors, you know, I'm no longer with Drury Outdoors, still very good friends with those guys. They are the I think the industry leader when it comes to producing outdoor television. And at that time, it was video. And one thing and what I'm trying to get at here is one of the things that we had faced uh, very early in our film career was the ability to be able to finish a video. Uh, we were offered to go into a pen and shoot pen raised deer to finish the film, and we refused to do it. And because we wanted it to be in the wild, we didn't want none of us wanted to hunt in a pen anyway. Um, and not that there's anything against that. I know there's a time and a place for that. Not so much preaching against that, but we ourselves as a company and individual hunters did not want to taint or take away from the 100% wild, 100% fair chase label. So so that cost us money, essentially, because there was some years we didn't have enough bucks to make a tape, so we had to wait another year to finish killing a few more deer to finish that production, and that of course cost money. But we didn't care. You know, I was a full-time firefighter. They had their full-time jobs that they did. Terry was in construction, and Mark was actually in sales, in outdoor sales, like Mossy Oak Camouflage. He was a sales rep, and so we all had good jobs. So, but I think that was the smartest move in the industry that we ever made, even though it was subtle at the time. But now thinking back, if you look at the integrity that hunting in the 100% wild, 100% fair chase carries in this industry, it was a pretty smart move on our part.
Yeah, their 13 video, I think that's like the most informative
Yeah,
that's out there. They do an incredible job with that. I know they have a lot of shows, but 13 is the one that I like the most.
not only that, but just trying to help everybody else be a better deer hunter. Try to see the way that they do things, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and they do a very good job of explaining what they're doing. You know, everybody calls Mark, you know, the mad scientist. When you get deep on something, you know, it's hard to explain. You know, get back to the basics to a point. You know, but they do a very good job, especially with their new DeerCast app. They got some very good videos on there, so props to them for trying to help everybody be a better deer hunter all the way around.
Yeah, and props to you from starting
Way
way back with them. So did you transfer right from there to Buckman, or?
No, no, not at all. In I say early 2000s, somewhere 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. Um, I I actually Drury Outdoors themselves, Mark and Terry, sat me down, and I don't want to badmouth them, but they changed. And this was a business decision on their behalf, and I can promise you, I don't blame them one bit for doing it. But I was becoming branded with Drury Outdoors as the face of the company, one of the faces of the company. It was basically Mark, Steve, and Terry. I mean, that's what it was, or Mark, Terry, and Steve, however you want to word it. And they wanted that company to be Mark and Terry, and I don't blame them. I mean, I had no ownership in Drury Outdoors, um, so they changed kind of how I was going to be compensated and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that I was happy with it, but I also understood what they were doing. And the first thing that I told them when they announced to me what they were doing, because I was shocked. I really, it kind of took me by surprise. But first thing I said to them is, first and foremost, no matter what happens, business, I want to remain friends. And I realized that when you talk about friendship and business, you have to separate those. And sometimes you have to make decisions based on business not friendship. And so that decision was made. I chose to go. Actually, they offered for me to stay with the show and produce about one kill per one of their releases. At the time, it was still all video; it wasn't television yet. And I did that for a year or two towards the end of my Drury Outdoor years, and then I had an offer from a television show, and I actually went to Mark and Terry. I said, "Look, I got an offer for that from this other show," and their response was, "If you're going to go to work for a different venue, different show, then you basically need to leave. You know, we don't want dual," which I didn't blame them. They wanted a personality on their series and really nowhere else. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, a business decision that I made, and I've never regretted it. I've actually, I count back, and not that it's all about money, but I made probably way more doing that than I would have if I'd have stayed with those guys. So, but that led me to that. Well, I was with that show for a while, and then I went with Hunter Specialties, helped them do videos for a few years and television, and then I went to Night and Hail to Pradco Outdoor Brands, and helped them do, of course, television and video. Of course, Harold and David were the main two faces in that series. But I did help every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'd get a hunt on there and produce for them. And of course, was on their pro staff, paid pro staff. And then from Night and Hail, here just this past year, I left Night and Hail, and then as we all know, Night and Hail now is no longer manufacturing calls. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall with that, and was asked to join the wonderful family of Woodhaven Custom Calls. And it was a perfect fit for me because I'm still competing in turkey calling, albeit not near as much as I was at one time. But heck, this past year, I worked very hard with Scott Ellis and the Woodhaven people, and actually made the finals in this year's Grand Nationals for the first time since 2006. So
Nice.
Still got it.
Yeah.
The old man made a comeback. So yeah, that's just kind of been my, in the video and outdoor industry and outdoor television, I've probably helped with more deer kills behind the camera, or as many as I have in front of the camera. And I've taken, of course, quite a few deer in front of the camera as well. So very, very blessed career, I can tell you that.
Well, we're glad you have you on the line because we need some help killing deer. This October has been brutal on us. So,
let's talk about real quick the fact that I'm going to give my buddy Mark Drury and Terry Drury a plug here. Their Deercast on you can go on Drury Outdoors website and download their Deercast on your phone, and it's a multifaceted app that mainly deals with their predictions of when deer are going to move and when they're not, and when is the best times and best type of spot maybe to be in. So it's really, really, like you said, Mark's a mad scientist and Terry's no slouch himself. They're both phenomenal whitetail hunters, and the results show they kill deer that just almost are out of reach of anybody else as far as they supplement their deer with feed, of course. They manicure and food plot their properties and manage them very intensely. They're just absolute geniuses at figuring out where to plant, what to plant, how to access, and then now they're into putting those airtight box blinds in, which is defying the normal realm of what whitetails can smell. And so they're beating the system, and because they're very serious about it and they're very good at it, and they have the resources to do it, and more power to them. I think that they're like I said, they're leading the industry as far as showing how and why they take those big whitetails. They're not scared to teach and tell about how they're doing it. So that leads me to the reason why I said about Deercast is I was asked by GotGameTech.com. It's a company called Got Game Tech. They've got a turkey tech app out. They've got an elk nuts app out. They've got a duck hunting app out. and they wanted to do a whitetail hunting app. And so through Scott Ellis, Scott had told them, Scott, of course, he's a world champion turkey caller. Scott, they were asking Scott if he knew anybody that, had a good reputation and integrity in the industry for whitetails. And Scott said, well, why don't you call Steve Stoltz? And so what this whitetail app is going to be, it's going to be called Whitetail Tech. And what it's going to do, you'll be able to load it on your phone for $7.99, $10.99. I don't even know how much it'll be, but it'll be a small amount. I don't think they've even released how much it'll be. But you can load that app on the phone, and you will have my thoughts on everything from calling whitetails to hanging tree stands, to taking inventory of your bucks, to targeting specific bucks, to planning for food plots for success, scouting tactics, tree stand, ground blind, and box blind locations, in-season tactics, doe groups, scent control and usage, wind direction and weather fronts, moon phases and how to use those to your best advantage, the top calling and rattling, sealing sequences. I'll demonstrate on this app and teach, and we will show live video and audio of those deer actually doing those calls. So it's my app, the Whitetail Tech app, will be more of picking Steve Stoltz's brain on your phone, if that's a good way to put it.
That's gonna be sweet. Like having Steve Stoltz in your pocket. Like, what would Steve do? I'm gonna trademark that. That's what would Steve do episode. So, yeah.
Yeah. So say this app is just say I'm gonna go on the outside and say it's $10.99. You download it once for $10.99, and you have all that information. And we will update that information. You're not going to download it; it'll be the same 3 years from now. As I think of things, I'll put it on there. We'll have other links to apps such as moon phases and things like that on there. So this will be an all-encompassing pick Steve Stoltz's brain on how I'm getting these big whitetails filmed and shot.
Okay, so so the app's gonna have an endless amount of stuff to do, from hanging stands to calling to box blind placement. So let's just dig into a couple of those topics.
Ground blind, we need help there.
Yeah, ground blind. So we're not really big on blind hunting. That's not something that we have done a lot. So what would be like the perfect situation for a blind hunting or a blind setup?
Well, are you talking about a ground blind, say like a pop-up or a box blind?
A pop-up.
Okay. Well, the first and foremost thing you have to realize when you pop up a blind is whitetails will notice it. Okay. So some hunters, I should say, because we're all hunters, kind of overthink it in that the biggest issue with a pop-up blind is background cover. So if you put the pop-up blind just kind of out in the middle of the field on its own, standalone, you'll get maybe a buck walk by it and kind of be curious about it. But a doe will stand there and stomp and snort and be very upset that thing is there because it's new. So that type of pop-up line can't be a pop-up line. It's a pop-up line that you put in and let the deer get used to.
Yeah.
If I'm making sense.
Yeah. We tucked one into some cedar thicket and brushed it in, had it set up, and then we had a high windstorm come through. And
I was gonna say we need some tips on how to keep it standing.
so we're gonna actually build a mobile blind out of a auger wagon cart. So we're gonna have our own box blind created to be able to move in there.
That's a smart idea, but again, if the blind stands on its own, whether it's brushed up or otherwise, does, especially the big mama doe, is going to notice it. So you got to let them get used to it. If you're going to do a pop-up blind where you're going to hunt that same hunt, and for instance, brush it in the midday and then hunt it for that evening, you definitely need to really, really pay attention and make sure it's blended in with something with background cover, and then you brush in the front as well and make it. And a mama doe may still notice it, but I promise you, a big mature buck will walk right by it and won't pay any attention to it.
That's something that I've noticed. Like a lot of people brush the front end, but they never worry about what's behind it. So they like put it in two trees and kind of brush up the front. But so if you definitely want back cover. That's how they notice it the most.
Absolutely, and you don't want any light showing through that blind. So, for those of you that have been blind hunting with no success and haven't been closing the back of the blind, in other words, you'll take out literally about 50 or 60% of your view, but your back needs to be completely blackened, the windows closed, and you'll have a lot less chance of them seeing you.
Do you wear black clothing, or do you still wear camo while in a pop-up?
So the answer to that is it doesn't make any difference. You're in there. If you're blacked up behind you, you can wear fluorescent orange, or you can wear, of course, my choice is mossy oak camouflage, or you can wear plain black. Don't make any difference.
Okay.
So we talked about the app, and you kind of went over it a little bit, but you never really stated why you created it. So we had that wrote down in our notes here. So why did you create this?
Well, I think one thing I want to mention. I mentioned about I went into great detail about Mark Drury's and Mark and Terry's Drury Outdoors' Deercast app. I did not know he was coming out with that. As many times as I've been with him, there's some business things he don't disclose, which I don't blame him. And they're sticklers about coming up with something, and they don't, announce it or anything till it's released. And by the way, Whitetail Tech will be released within a week, hopefully.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Cross our fingers. I don't have a date when it launches, but it's very, very soon. So be looking for it. Just go to gotgametech.com. www.gotgametech.com, and there should be a release date on there for Whitetail Tech. At any rate, so our thought was basically just they showed me the Turkey Tech app that Scott Ellis did, and by the way, if you're into turkey hunting and turkey calling, get that app. It's called Turkey Tech with Scott Ellis. It is a phenomenal app for learning your calling skills, learning better calling skills, hunting skills, tips. He's picking Scott Ellis's brain, and he's a genius when it comes to hunting turkeys and calling turkeys. And so they sent me Turkey Tech app. They sent me the Elk Nuts app, just another amazing app. I think they sent me the duck app. I don't know if I downloaded it. I'm not a duck hunter. But point is, I looked it over and thought this would be great to do for whitetails, but do it a little different flavor in that, more like what Scott Ellis did, in that it's going to have going to go over the basic calling and the calls and the vocalizations and why you use them and when you use them. But then it's also going to go into a bunch of my thoughts and ideas and my theories of getting big deer shot. And so that's where the difference was going to be in this app compared to a lot of other ones out there.
All right. So you just wanted something that was going to be different, where it wasn't just it wasn't just like the weather. It was what would you do, because you've been doing it for years and years, super successful. What would you do in this situation? So it's basically like we'll have an app that we can just call Steve and be like, okay, this is what's going on, Steve. What should I do? So that's an awesome idea, to have someone that's that vast of knowledge right there, where you could be like, okay, I want to set this blind up. Let's go to the blind section. What's my tips on blinds? And you have it instant too, so you're not Googling something and then going through 3 or 4 bad links to actually find something that's beneficial. It's right there.
Absolutely. And so my thought was someday I would love to do a book, although I haven't shot near the size deer that like Mark and Lee and Tiffany and some of those these top hunters have shot. But I don't have, I'm not making excuses. I don't have the resources. I have a small piece of ground that I lease. and I own 4 acres. I live in, southern Iowa. And I'm actually originally a Missouri boy. I moved to southern Iowa, and that's of course where I'm going to retire full time. But I've got 280 acre piece of ground that I have to try and manage. And so when you start, kind of, I guess you could say the working man hunters theory of big whitetails, then you can come pick my brain.
No, I like that a lot. Yeah.
You know,
'Cause that's what we say about juries. I mean, they're super knowledgeable. I give them that, but me and homie can't relate to them. We don't have the private acreage like they do, and we don't have the age class of bucks, and we don't have 90 does hitting a food plot. It's just something we don't see. So I like how you said, this is kind of the average guy app to where you can look at the conditions, but what juries normally see on their farm and what I see is a lot different,
And they'll be the first one to tell you that. They'll be the first one to tell you that their conditions are, far superior over what many people have to deal with. But that, obviously that is not going to keep us from watching all their wonderful information that they put out, because it's all still true and accurate and correct. And then they are very good at getting that information out. Way better than I'll ever be. I can tell you that. So that really what makes this app so special, is it's a way to bring my thoughts and theories out a little bit more than I'm able to, just being a full-time firefighter still, on an actual app. I would kind of relate it to if I wrote a book, or at least a quick version book, this app would be it.
Yeah, and you were saying you haven't shot as big as deer, but my big thing is its consistency. You know what I mean? If you could shoot a mature deer, no matter what its size is, year after year after year, you got something going on. You know what you're doing. You've either figured a piece of ground out or you figured the deer out. You know what I mean? So it's great to shoot a 200. I mean, but if you can shoot, 5, 6, 7 years in a row, you're shooting a mature deer. I mean, you got something figured out. I mean.
Well, and I appreciate that, and that's exactly, and again, I say this for the listeners out there, because every listener out there that we're talking about knows full well what Drury's have done. Wonderful job, beautiful job. I'm so very proud of them, because I was once a big part of their company, and I helped them take that company to the highest of levels, and then they've just taken that beyond what I could have ever imagined them to do. But they'll be the first one to tell you that they're growing their big whitetails to an amazing rate, and they're managing them at amazing accuracy, and their results are there. But you can't compare it, just what you said. You cannot compare it by inches. In other words, if you're taking down 6.5, 5.5-year-old deer consistently, 7.5, 8.5-year-old deer sometimes, and those older deer are dropping to your bow or to your gun or crossbow or whatever your weapon is consistently, then you are just as successful. You are just as successful as the Drurys or Lakoskis or any of them out there that are shooting these 190 and 200-inch giants, because you're dealing with the same thing. You're dealing with big, old, mature deer that are tough to get shot, tough to figure out, that don't show themselves in daylight hours very much at all, if at all. And you have, your task is to go out and get them killed, whether they have 135 inches of rack on their head or 170 or 80. It doesn't make any difference. If they're an older deer, they're just as hard to shoot.
Yeah, for sure. I shot a 6.5-year-old last year, and I was just like, so over the moon, because most of the time I shoot 3.5s. But I finally shot a really nice mature deer, and I was like, wow, I finally accomplished a goal, and I found where he's bedding, went in there and killed him early October. So it was like mind blowing that it actually worked out. But I'm like, man, listen to these guys for so long, finally paid off, waiting for a cold front, waited on a cold front, went in there and got it done.
Well, and that's the hardest thing to get across to your whitetail hunter that wants to shoot big deer, and that's to change their own hunting tactics. that's the hardest thing to get somebody to change is getting them to basically look in the mirror and look at themselves and say, you are your own worst enemy. And when that happens, amazing things will happen. One of the first things that the hunter will realize, if that hunter wants to take it from the level of just shooting any deer to shooting to quality deer management, shooting upper end deer, older deer. Not that there's a time and there's a place for shooting any deer as well, especially when you get kids into hunting. You got to learn how to hunt and shoot deer. And you're not going to do it you're not going to become a big trophy whitetail hunter overnight. So I would never, ever suggest or say that hunting just any deer, shooting small bucks is a bad or wrong thing to do. But when you want to take it to that next level and you want to start growing big whitetails and shooting bigger whitetails, which a lot of people do, it's a very popular thing right now, then one of the biggest changes in your hunting arsenal will be to change your hunting tactics from spending a lot of time hunting and a little time scouting to spending most of your time scouting and very little time hunting. And the reason why that change happens is because you realize that when you get it to the point where when you climb a deer, you know you're going to get a shot at a good one, you're not going to be in that tree as much as you were at one time, where when you were just shooting and hunting deer and not worried about shooting big whitetails, you're putting as much time in that tree as you can, all day, all weekend, every weekend, and very little time actually preparing and scouting. And again, to transform yourself to making, basically reverse it and make it 90% of the time preparing and 10% of the time hunting, that's when your results for big whitetails will go way up.
I like that. I've never heard that before, which makes sense because, I mean, the more knowledge you have is key. But I mean, I put a lot of time in stand. I feel like so. I mean, I think, but I'm always basing it off wind. I hunt a lot of public when I don't have access. I mean, I've only put 6 hours in my best stand. So I mean, and it's November 2nd now.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
I see what you're saying. When I first started hunting, it was I'm going. Everybody used to say you can't kill them on the couch or whatever. So I'd go no matter what it was, because there's a chance. But now that I have grown a little bit, shot a few nice bucks, I start breaking down everything. And now I'm almost like talking myself out of going because I'm like, this ain't right. But it's good because if I was in there on the wrong conditions and they win me one time, they could bust and go to the neighbors because I hunt very small pieces, so it's
Sure.
it's hard to hold them in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say basically what you just said. Just look at me over the past 3 years. Started listening to podcasts, started reading a lot more articles. I want to shoot mature deer, shoot some bigger bucks. And, this year is really, I've finally honed in on it, really started to pay off. I've had more encounters with, does in bow range. I've had more deer in bow range than ever before in just 1 month. So, I think, Steve, something you might be able to hit on is just never stop trying to learn and become a better deer hunter.
Absolutely. And to that point, you guys are talking about increasing your sightings. And that's because you're spending more time preparing. You're doing the things you're watched and learned either with the Drury's or now eventually, if you get the Whitetail Tech app with Steve Stoltz, you're transforming and not realizing you're transforming. The point is, with mature whitetails, you have to make no mistake about this. The minute they start feeling pressure, your chances of getting them are going to go down. So how do you combat that? How do you keep from letting them know you're there? How do you keep from pressuring them out of your property, whether it be 50 acres or 250 acres? I hunt a 280 acre piece. That's basically about the only piece that I hunt now. How do you keep from over hunting that spot? How do you keep from letting those big whitetails know that you are to where you kind of basically they develop a pattern for you? And the answer is no pressure. So sit down and whether you got 50 acres or got 350 acres, sit down and start developing a plan. Get your aerial photo out. Go to Google Earth. Go to HuntX or whatever that is, that app that you can get hunting property on and the names of the owners and all that. And start really, really looking at your property as an overview, and look at it as if it's the first time you've ever looked at your property. You might be hunting your property your whole life. Look at it from a different perspective, and start looking at where your sanctuaries could be, where your bedding areas are, your travel corridors, your structure, and start trying to develop game plans for accessing a very low key access, for what many people don't take in consideration is how they're going to get out of there without spooking deer. You start developing a completely rewrite the game plan. It'd be like a coach and head coach in football that's consistently losing and they get fired. Well, if they get hired again at a different football team, they're not going to go in with the same game plan. So set your map down, your aerial photo, whatever you got, and start figuring out a completely different way how to approach that property. What winds are correct? How to get into stands without being detected. And guess what? You'll start realizing there's a lot of stands that you just can't get in and out of without being detected. Now, you either A, take that stand out, or B, I would suggest leave it in and only hunt it maybe one time at the right time of the year. Do not overhunt that stand. Conversely, your stands that are out on the perimeter and your stands that are easy to get into without bumping deer and easy to back out without bumping deer, say out of a feed field, whatever, those stands you can hunt more frequent and get into without disturbing deer as much. Therefore, you can hunt them a little more often. You start dissecting your property to hunt it on the low pressure side, you'll start getting way better results with seeing big whitetails.
Yeah, I got a stand like that that's in the center of my property, and it's just mega good. It's on a good oak flat. It's in a huge big oak tree that's just gorgeous, and I used to go there early and hunt. And then this year, I was like, no one's going to. I haven't been in there since February when I checked on the stand during shed season. so
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going in there this year, and then I'm going to probably send Homie in there because I'm going to hunt my for sure stand. That's always good. So I'm going to send – this one's good too, but I'm going to send him in there here soon and be like, all right, man, you'll be able to find this stand. It has been – I mean, it's maybe 15 acres that hasn't been touched in 15 acres of solid timber that hasn't been touched since February. There's some deer bedded in there, I guarantee it, and hopefully there's a big one that's going to push a doe up in there. That's my plan. Push a doe up in there in that secluded spot that he knows. And one thing to add to that, I'm after a giant buck that everybody on listening to this podcast knows, right? And since I didn't access that stand this year, I never have had pictures of him in mid-October. This year, I got pictures of him mid-October. And the only thing that I changed was not accessing that center of that piece. So,
There you go.
Yeah, I think that he's feeling more secure there. So, he
absolutely he is. And so what state are you in?
Illinois.
Okay, so basically that's a stand along around November 8th or 10th. You go get in it, and you take a lunch. And old fat boy here needs to eat. So if I got a stand like that, I pack some food and I'll burrow in. But I promise you that may be the only day I hunt that stand. If I don't get a good one shot out of there, I usually don't go back. I mean, not that you can't, but that's just the type of spot. Too many deer will know you're there after you go and hunt it.
So with a stand like that where deer could possibly come from, 360 degrees, are you just playing the wind for where the deer are most likely to appear? Because, I mean, just like Cody said, it's in the center of his property. And then I'm also thinking of a stand that I got, almost 360 degree possibility. Are you just putting your weight on what's most likely to happen?
Yes, I'm putting my weight on the, basically I'm hunting it on the wind that is, let's just say the lesser of all evils, if that makes sense. Um, there's two ways you can look at that. Either you can hunt it, wait for a day where there's no wind, and you're just dealing with thermal currents. The problem with those type of days in a stand like that is something can win you anywhere around you when they get close. And you don't know exactly what your thermals are doing. By the way, sidebar, I'm a big Code Blue. I love Code Blue. I love Code Blue products and use them. I helped Code Blue develop a product called a smoke detector, and it's a wind checker, and it's basically like cigarette smoke in a bottle, but it don't smell like cigarette smoke. And you can if you check when you don't have hardly any wind, constantly check what your thermals are doing, and the only way you can do that is with that smoke detector by Code Blue.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, it'll actually show exactly, that smoke will just flow exactly how your thermal currents are traveling, and wind currents and wind direction is something. If I do ever do a book, I really will spend a lot of time in dissecting what exactly winds do and why deer win you when they shouldn't be, and why deer don't win you when they should be.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should do that. I need that intel, man.
Well, we're gonna cover a lot of that in the Whitetail app as well.
Awesome.
So, but the main thing is, the take-home point in here is, I would choose the lesser wind of all evils and hunt it in a steady, no less than about 5 to 8 mile per hour, in particular 10 to 12 mile per hour, 15 mile per hour, steady wind. And that way, you're done that one direction, but the other 75, 80 degrees around you, you're good. And that wind is not going to be variable and change. That's when I would choose to hunt a stand like that.
Yeah, my particular stand, if I have a straight west, I blow into a very deep ravine and then kind of blows me up out into a feed field. So I feel secure in the morning blowing into that ravine because I feel like the deer are already past that area, or they're already past the feed field and they're going to be coming in. So they might be edging me, but they're not going to be directly on my wind. And then in the evening, it's right where the bedding area where I shot my buck last year that came out of. So that's to east of me, or west of me, I'm sorry, on a west wind. So if they come out there, and I actually shot a buck with a shotgun 5 years ago that actually came out of there chasing a doe. So it's been a really good stand. But like you said, not pressuring is key, because I've seen that this year where a buck that I believe it's got to be 6.5, right?
Which one?
Mr.
Right.
Freeze.
Yeah.
I mean, he was 173 last year, and he's a little bigger this year. He's a giant deer. Blessed to be able to chase him, and he's on my property, center of my property in the middle of October, which has never happened. But I used to hunt there a lot more than I have. I used to go there and pull cams. I didn't even run cams in there this year because I was like, I'm not going in. I'm not doing that. So from listening to guys like you that say don't do this, I'm finally like,
I'm not gonna
I'm
do
not
it.
gonna do it finally.
Well,
So,
that's the hardest thing. Again, I'm going to reiterate, that's the hardest thing to get hunters to change, is their own hunting tactics. The hunter loves to hunt, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the hunter, us as hunters, were raised, hunt hard and hunt often and put the time out there. And yes, that is all good. But if you're going to consistently take big mature whitetails, you got to be way smarter than that. You have got to change your hunting tactics to preparation, and boom, right conditions, right stand. It's time to hunt. I have the right wind. I have a high pressure system coming up. Barometric pressures, pegging 30 or above, which is great deer movement. Barometric pressure. You have, good, say northwest wind, and you need for that stand, and it's steady at 10, 12 mile an hour. Perfect conditions. Timing. You have November 8th or 10th, say they're starting to get into lockdown, or they're actually breeding the estrus does, And so you want to be in that security cover. All those things line up to go hunt that stand. And it might be the only day you hunt that stand, but you'll get a good one shot that day because of all those conditions. Where before the pre trophy whitetail hunter, before you were hunting in a big mature whitetails, you would go every chance you got, even though you waited for a northwest wind to go tromp into that stand and hunt it. And that just absolutely kills your chances of shooting big deer. The more you hunt spots like that can't be approached or reapproached when you leave the stand without being detected by whitetails.
I feel you there. That's one thing we really worked on this year was access. We changed our access completely to 2 or 3 different stands, and one stand is just one of those stands, like you said, that you have to be in there. The access isn't perfect, but you got to be there, right? But
Right.
we want to pull that cam so bad because we had Bucks daylight in the last cold front on the 18th.
18th, 19th, yeah.
And we haven't went back because we're like, we need the perfect wind to go get that cam, and we haven't had that. And then we're like, well, let's just pull it when we hunt. So we're going, and we've hunted it one time for a couple hours, and then the wind switched, so we got out of there. So that's one of those that's going to be key. It's on a natural scrape tree out in the middle of a CRP field. It's a perfect set, but we haven't hunted it hardly at all because, like I said, listen to guys like you and finally saying, I want to go hunting, so, I'm going to go to public ground because, if the wind's questionable there, I don't really know where the deer are going to come from, so I'll just go out here and hang a set and hunt because we're still young. I like to go out there and hang a stand and think I'm going to shoot a big deer and never do, but one day it'll work.
But just going back to the scrape tree, early season we didn't have any deer daylighting.
Yeah.
And we could tell it was a scrape from last year, so we're just trying to wait and see if it was going to get fired up again.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't had the perfect conditions, so we had just kind of taken all the intel that we had and said, as much as we want to go in there, we can't.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to get messed up later. So, and then one thing you had mentioned, Steve, is you got to wait for the right timing. We know the rut, or, pre-rut and the rut, we're thinking it's going to be a money spot. So we just don't want to burn it up.
Checking that scrape during midday, especially once does start coming in an estrus and hitting it, because there's a ton of does hitting it on cam. So when they start leaving their scent on that scrape, I guarantee us a big boys will be checking that. So,
well, and you just mentioned the frustration that many hunters that hunt big whitetails have, and that's sometimes you just can't hunt. Sometimes it means you gotta just go maybe do some scouting from a distance, go check other trail cams that the wind is right to go get to them and check them. And many times what I do is I'll use those trail cameras for next year's information. I'll use this year as a great example. I'm just use this as a little example. I got 280 acres, and I usually run anywhere from 6 to 10 trail cameras on that property in different sections. Most of them on the food plots. I've got 4 different food plots on that farm, and then I got them on scrapes, and then about 4 or 5 I have in the heavy timber on ridges, in near security cover, in travel corridors near security cover. All those spots are tough to get into and check those trail cameras. So I don't check them. I when I check them after the season. And so I use all the information that I got from that camera for that year and or for the next year and the year after. I will not travel in and pull those chips. I put the highest memory chip I can put in there. I use cameras that usually only take 4 or 8 AA batteries, and they last forever. And one of them's a Moultrie M80. Love them. They just last forever, and they don't hardly wear the battery down. I also love a camera called it's a $99 Bushnell at Walmart actually. Takes 4 batteries, and it lasts forever. And then I don't, even if it runs out of pictures, out of pictures, then I'll pull and I'll study those trail cam pictures. What when they started visiting the scrapes in there, and when they started actually showing up in daylight hours, and when they started moving in the mornings as opposed to just evenings or throughout the night. And I use that intel for future years, not for the year that I'm hunting, especially when you're hunting a smaller piece of ground. So, and that's very important, because remember, we're talking about not letting a whitetail know you're there. And just walking in right now, this time of year, November 2nd, just walking into the middle of your thickest bedding cover and checking a trail camera could blow your whole hunt for that whitetail that year. So I mean, it's that it can be that tedious when it comes to. Now, I will say this: there are times of the year that all bets are off when it comes to pressure, and most of that is usually right before they come into estrus and when they're in estrus, when the does are in lockdown. And then you need to turn your attention to hunting does and hunting the doe travel corridors and the doe bedding areas. And then you could actually have run out a buck that you were previously hunting when he was still in his little home core area, and then he'll be back in there because the doe is breeding. So don't always lose hope that just because you had one of your target bucks win you, or you blew him out of his bed or whatever, that you still can't get him shot. But bear in mind that they will take very little of that disturbance.
Yeah, you mentioned that Moultrie. Me and homies ran pretty much every cam that's out right now. We got $40 cams to $150,
Yeah.
$200 cams. But the Moultrie's video is primo. We started running some on video, and there is nothing that has beat that Moultrie video.
Nope. Dependable.
Yeah.
Every time.
The battery lasts forever.
Yeah.
We run the lithiums in it, but I mean the one on the Moultrie set, we got a camera hung right on the tree with a stand in it, and we've had 4 shooters there, but all at night.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been running for a long time, and we've had no problems with it at all. So,
well, I'm going to cover this in the Whitetail app, but real briefly, let me just expound on something you just mentioned about getting shooters on trail camera, and albeit the pictures at night. One of the biggest mistakes I think that the hunting industry is missing, at least the and I'm good friends with, at least I know Dan Moultrie very well. And he knows me very well. Wonderful man. And then they back their product 110%. I would highly recommend Moultrie anything. In fact, I have a Moultrie mobile on one of my scrapes right now on one of my.
Yeah, I got the Moultrie mobile on the bedding cover right now.
Oh yeah,
I love it. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go in and disturb it. And those batteries, like I said, they last a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the key things that you said is multiple pictures of big mature deer, and they were at night. Well, I can tell you this, and listeners, please write this down. If you're getting pictures of a big mature buck on a camera, he's not living more than 100 to 200 yards from that camera. He's not moving much, whether it's daylight or dark. And if you're getting pictures of him, he's right there. And that's the amazing thing. What I find out, and I talk to hunters that check their trail cameras, and they can't figure out. They're going in and they're pulling a chip every other day or every couple of days. They're probably not paying attention where the wind's going when they go check their chip, which is very important. You've got to have the wind blowing from the bedding cover out to you before you check your trail camera. You don't want to bust anything that's bedded near. And I can promise you, if you're getting pictures of big mature deer, there is a good chance that big buck is literally living within eyesight of that camera, living his life within eyesight of that camera. Think of that. And if you start treating that trail camera like that, when you'll realize when you're starting to get big pictures of big deer, I don't care whether it's 2:00 in the morning or 2:00 in the afternoon, if he's showing up on that camera, he's right there and he's living there. And especially early and late season, especially. The rut, a little bit more, all bets are off, especially during the peak of the rut. But I promise you, 90% of your bucks like to hold tight. They're not wanderers. All bucks have different personalities, just like humans. Some bucks will live all their life in a little tiny spot. Some people will live all their life in one city. Some people will move away and work all their career and then move back when they retire. Big whitetails do that. And some people will move away and never move back where they came from. And a few big whitetails will do that. So a big whitetail's traits and tactics are very, very similar to humans. But I would say the vast majority of your whitetails are homebodies. They don't travel far, and they don't want to travel far, and they won't. And so if you just get in your mind that you're getting pictures on that trail camera and treat it like that deer is bedded 50 yards from that camera, you'll have a lot higher success with killing deer based on MRI, which is most recent information.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad you brought that up because I never really think about that because you get those midnight 2:00 bucks and you're thinking that they're traveling a long ways, but that makes sense early season. Why I don't know why they would have to travel that far, but that's just I think that's what people has like said, so that's what you believe. But what do you think about if you just get like you maybe get like 2 or 3 pics of them a season from that cam? Are you saying it's like if you're getting consistent pics of a buck on that cam, or if it's just random, like you might get one like the 18th of October and then a little later, or do you think he's still living close to that area, or do you think he might have just took a different route that day?
No, I think if it's early season, he's still living right there. He's just not walking past that camera much.
I see.
Again,
that's good to know, man. That's awesome to know because I'm trying to figure this buck out that I got, and I got him on one cam that I've never got him on before, and on the Moultrie Mobile, actually, on a wind that I couldn't hunt 3 minutes before shooting light, and my stand's just right down from there, so he's headed that way. And then a few days later, we actually got him maybe 200 yards away from him on a different cam, so that makes sense, and it was maybe 5 days later. So he's living closer than I think he is.
Absolutely. I also believe that trail cameras are misused in information that's right there, but hunters are not reading that information correctly. And one of the things you talked about earlier, where the buck was showing up at like in certain times of year and then not in others, and that's might be that trait of that buck. He may every year like to frequent that area in the month of October, checking on the doe groups there, and then move off to actually breed in a different area. So, and those traits you can pick up by year after year of trail cam pictures of that buck. Boom, you got him on a small food plot near his bedding in October 2nd. Boom, you got a picture of him on October 10th, same food plot. October 15th, October 20th. Now on October 25th, you start getting some different bucks. November 1st, no, that buck don't show. November 15th, that buck still hasn't showed. November 30th, that buck hasn't showed. That buck just told you exactly what you got to do to kill him. And what you got to do to kill him is get the right wind, the right conditions, hopefully a cold front in early October on that food plot near that bedding area, and you'll get them killed. And if you don't get them killed before about October 20th, you probably won't until late season.
Well,
you see my point?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just throughout podcasting here, all the listeners know, but you've called, you said that you're probably not going to have a decent shot at Mr. Freeze until the last weekend of November, till the first weekend of December, because of the history of him on trail cams.
Yeah.
So, that just plays into right here.
Yeah, my only daylight pick of that buck was November 27th with a yearling doe going right past my stand. And then I got one edging daylight last year, December 3rd, so not very far away, going right past another one of my stands, but he was edging daylight. And that's that stand that's in the center of the timber that I said that I haven't went into at all.
Which part of November?
November 27th, he was with a yearling doe right on the edge of a field.
What about the other time?
December 3rd, December 3rd, right
So-
like 10 minutes after day or shooting light, he was right by that stand in the center of my piece. So I think I have a theory pinned down, but I put a trail cam there where I think my theory might have worked, but he hasn't showed on that trail cam yet.
But we've had him early season, which Cody's had him
Yeah.
early season the last couple years,
Yeah.
maybe 3 years, but
Yeah.
definitely the last 2. But, like Cody said, he's always disappeared, late September and hasn't showed back up until around
Too late
Thanksgiving.
November, yeah.
So this year, we've got cams in a different spot, and we've got him on cam in October.
Hitting a scrape tree that's been hit repeatedly year after year, so it makes me think that he's been hitting it more than I thought. But I don't know. Maybe I could ask you. Juries say, a lot of people say, when a buck gets older, their home range might shrink. Is that something that you've noticed also?
Absolutely. Yeah. If they're going to wander, it's going to be when they're 2.5, 3.5, and maybe 4.5. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think maybe since there's less pressure this year, I haven't walked in that part of the timber.
Better access
To the stands that I have, and then not hunting that property near as much, spending more focused on the public and the other piece, and then the fact that he's there now. That's all going to contribute. That's got to contribute to where he would most of the time be gone. Now he's there. And it's people like Steve that's been saying this to us for 10 years, but
right.
we just haven't been listening. But
Well, 2 things that come to my mind. Obviously, you're doing all the right things now, which is probably why you're actually not kind of pressuring him off your spot. That could be one thing. Second thing could be you just could have been missing where his October range was till now. But what I wonder is, if you're seeing him in October, why weren't you hunting him in October?
I've never seen him in October until this year. And
okay, so if you don't get him shot this year, more than likely in October next year he should be frequenting. If you treat bottom line is this: if you play your cards right and don't for some reason get him shot this fall, I think you've set yourself up for a great hunt with him in October next year if you don't let him know you're there.
yeah,
Is that so? 10 minutes after shooting light, like you said.
yeah, that was.
And then the
December
other
3rd.
one was 4:30 in the morning on the scrape tree.
Yeah, that was
So
4:30 in the morning.
Don't put too much stock on those times.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that was going to be my question. Those are the times that we're dealing with here in
But,
October.
I mean, really, from where I think he was betting, I mean, the way he came in,
I was like, he would have had to lay up till 3 in the morning.
he'd had to lay up a long time. Boy, he
Yeah.
could have fed right in that field.
And then just
and then
decided
just
to work
decided,
that
well,
way.
let's go work this scrape. This is all we think about is this deer. If you can't tell, I've let Homie onto my piece this year. He has full range on Mr. Freeze if he sees him. We found the sheds off this buck last year, literally 80 yards from my buddy's house that lives out there. So I'm emotionally attached to a deer, which is not smart to do, but I am. So.
Well, let me and I'll suggest this: since you know that deer's personality, you're really starting to develop and this is what Mark Drury is so intelligent about. And I'm not saying I'm not intelligent about it, but I mean Mark is just the best.
Next level.
Yes, he's the next level because he files all that information in his mind for a multitude of different bucks, and he don't forget any of those little. I mean, you and I'd have to write it down or put in a word processor or something, notes or something to remember all that stuff. But what I will tell you this, I would try for Mr. Freeze and see if this don't work. I would try completely removed from where you're thinking you might get him killed, but a nearby doe travel corridor or doe bed. It sounds like he really, really is dependent on doe travel and is with does, and particularly around by about the 20th of November. So I would not be scared to still stay away from the spot that you think you'll get him killed at, and try throwing up a stand or two on some doe groups not far from there, and just see if those does don't bring him by you.
That's a good tactic to think about, like back there in the very back corner where I talk about like that creek draw in between those
Yeah.
two bedding areas.
Yep.
Throw a
Just
stand
a
back
thought.
there, and I'm not going to be pressuring his area, and I could still hunt.
On the corner of the field?
No, way back on the back.
Oh.
Yeah, way back on the back.
Way back.
Yeah.
Oh boy. That's
Yeah.
one of them one-timers.
Yeah, that's a one.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He's told he's already told you, he's told you several different ways to get him killed. One is obviously on a food plot in October, where he's telling you where he's liking to bed in the month of October anyway. And then he's told you where he's liking to frequent with the does and what time of year he loves to be with those does. So wouldn't it make sense if you're waiting for the right time to get in that tree? In the meantime, if you want to try hunting them once or twice, go to different doe groups around that area, hunt just like you're going to go try and kill a doe, and see if one of those does don't drag him past you. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
What do you think about getting radical? You know, trying something that you've never done before, or setting up in just a random spot that you think he might be traveling to.
That would be safe. That would
be safe. Yeah.
So you're talking about basically hunting an observation stand?
Yeah, an observation stand that you could possibly kill. You're not 100%.
Yeah.
You know your wind's going to be fine. So what the scenario is there's a screen house that the people built on this property in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of timber. And I can get on top of that screen house and glass where I think he's traveling looking for does. And I feel like I'd be safe. I feel like the wind would be perfect on a straight north. No one would spook at that point. And I'd be up high enough overlooking a ravine that is pretty nasty that I've never had a stand on, that I think he might be bedding in a lot. And I think what he's doing is I think he's pushing does into a certain area and then holding them up in like a little 5-acre piece and then breeding them there and then leaving. Because when I walk it during shed season, it's just tore. This little 5-acre piece is just tore up. And I find sheds in there too. So I know that there's big bucks like that area. So.
And I guess I'm confused. What kind of house is it?
It's like a basically where they like stored stuff. They used to go out there and like have campouts and stuff. So it's like a building, but it's just screened on the outside, but it's got a shingled roof.
Okay, so it's like a outdoor recreation screened in porch.
Yeah, that they haven't used it for 5 or 6 years. So it's like grown up and you know, there's trees down right by it. It's kind of a disaster area, but I can get up on top of it very easily and then have a 15-foot visual of what, you know, all that timber.
Yeah, I guess my next question would be, why wouldn't you have a stand there?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of deer travel there, I guess. But I've always hunted to the south of it or toward the north of it, which is the deep end stand that I haven't been to yet. But see,
Right.
the deep end stand is where I got him going towards that area, headed south to north, and that stand would have been north of where that picture was taken. So I feel like he was bedded south of that day. Because I don't see him getting up December 3rd and traveling very far in the daylight if he didn't have to. Because it was seasonably warm too last year around that time,
Right.
So it wasn't cold in him
It
getting
was like
up.
almost 50.
Yeah, it was like 50. So
Well, the bottom line is that certainly is an off the wall tactic, and that wouldn't hurt. I just would I mean, I guess several factors enter into that, and that is they're not always betting the exact same spot every time. You remember that. I mean, they do kind of randomly bet in a sense. And if they're still with does, they're going to bet where the does bet, or going to, you know, tend. My just listening to that whole scenario, my thought would be, go in and hang a climber or hang a stand and hunt if you're going to go there.
Yeah.
Unless you just want to make sure you stay back and don't disturb anything.
Yeah.
But I think December 3rd or November, whatever time you're going to go in there, that's not the time to be observing. I think you need to be hunting them.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I mean, he daylighted, so he was feeling pretty confident. I mean, he was on the edge of going to the edge of a field at 9 a.m. with a doe. So.
Yeah, but I mean, based on that one picture, that's probably just because he was he was tending a doe, and that's where the doe was taking him.
Yeah.
So again, I would not try and be so finite as to where you exactly need to shoot them, and just generally go in and observe from an observation stand, not far from that screen porch area, but in a doe travel corridor. And one of those does very liable to drag him by you.
All right. Well, I appreciate the pointers. I tend to do this on every episode. We revert back to Mr. Freeze because the reason I named him Mr. Freeze is because I've frozen a stand repeatedly late season because that's when he likes to show up chasing this deer for the last 3 years. So I named him Mr. Freeze, and then he actually became the Batman Mr. Freeze picture of when I talk about him. That's what pops up. So